What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Michael Lab Show. This is a special episode of the podcast. We are at episode 100 of this this long journey I've been on. This is going to be a reminiscing podcast, one that I probably sit back and I can't believe that I'm here. I can't believe that I'm sitting here in, my studio, bedroom, whatever you want to call it. And I'm talking to you, talking to everybody. For, been doing this for a whole year. I've been doing this for a whole year, and sorry about that. So much has happened in a whole year, so much change has taken place, not just with me, but with the world as a whole, and it's, let me make sure this doesn't fall off, with everything, and I'm grateful that everyone listens. I'm grateful that people tune in every week, listen to the podcast, show me love, reach out to me on Instagram, reach out to me on Twitter, reach out to me in person, reach out to me, on Instagram, on Facebook, at gatherings. They ask me about the podcast, why I have the podcast, when I started the podcast, how long I've been doing the podcast. And it's something that I truly put in a lot of time. I put a lot of time into this. I put a lot of hours into this. And every time I upload a episode, if the excitement I get inside of me is just like day one, just like the first episode I ever uploaded. That's how I feel. And the reason why that is because every time I upload a podcast, I know there's people out there who are listening to it, and not just listening to it because there's nothing else to listen to, but because there's something about it that makes them come back for more and more and more. And I get, it's weird. I get my podcast. It's not weird. It makes sense. I get a comment very often on my podcast that it reminds them a lot like Joe Rogan's podcast. And it's interesting because before I started a podcast, I had something before, before the Michael Lab Show. I think it was like Mike's like rants and experiences and rants, or talks and rants, or something like that, where I've always, for my entire life, I've always been a very quiet, reserved person, verbally, but inside I've always been hyperactive in my thought process. I'm always constantly taking in information. I'm always constantly observing things around me. I'm always trying to think things through. After I say something, I try to figure out why I said it. Someone gives me a response, I try to really process why they said what they said, or why I think they didn't say something else. I'm always very aware of the conversation I'm in with people. And it started young. I remember being in middle school. I remember going to school every day and wanting and watching people my age. And when I was at my house, I would watch YouTube videos. I was watching Call of Duty YouTube videos. I was watching, I don't think I was really in a podcast at this time. It was pretty much just Call of Duty YouTube videos. And I remember I was young. I was like in 8th grade, 9th grade. And I bought myself a router. I mean, not a router, a video capture, a Hauppauge HD PVR. And this was, I don't know, I was 14 years old, 14, 15. I was 13 years old, and that would have been 10 years ago. So this was like 2010, 2009, 2010, before YouTube was even, I mean, it was there, but it wasn't really there. So this was probably more like 2011. Because I used to just watch YouTube. I used to just watch Call of Duty videos. I never really knew it was even possible to have your own channel. So I went ahead and I bought like my first capture card ever. At the time, it was, if you recorded in 480p, which is like a standard video quality, like my YouTube video for the podcast is 1080p. 480p was good at the time. You know, it was almost great. And if you had like 720p, that was astonishing. Like if only reason you had 720p is if you had like 10,000 plus subscribers, which at the time in 2009 or 2011, it was if you had that many subscribers, it was insane. You know, the world was just a different place. You were essentially YouTube famous. And I remember just watching it and going to school, and I knew there was something different. Nobody seemed to be in the same world that I was in. Nobody seemed to have a desire to make YouTube videos. No one seemed to have a desire to watch Call of Duty videos. And I found this very unique about myself. And I think at that time, I started figuring out what I was about, what I enjoyed. And it was about that time where I decided to make a YouTube channel. So I bought everything I needed. I set up everything I needed, and I started uploading on YouTube way back in the day. I can look at it, but I think like 2011, 2010, 2012. And I was doing it all the time. And I remember going into school. I didn't really tell people about it. But then when I started telling people about it, there was people that would, make fun of you for it. There was people who enjoyed it. But I remember during this entire time, I just didn't care. I never worried about how my perception was going to be taken by people around me, by my friends, especially by, family, by coworkers, because I was working at this time, by, the ones closest to me. It never entered my mind to really even listen to what anybody had to say about what I was doing, because I found so much joy in it. I felt like I had a voice, and my voice should be shared, and not in like a cocky way, but just in, there was a freedom to it. When I sit and I do a podcast, and when I sit and I used to do commentaries for my YouTube videos for Call of Duty, I don't feel like there's people listening to it, and it's unique, because I've done a few podcasts with people, with family, with friends, and you can tell that when you're doing a podcast with somebody, they have this notion in the back of their head. They know that this is going to be listened to by hundreds of people. And I never had that feeling with anything I've ever done on YouTube. I've been on YouTube for 10 years. I've had Call of Duty channels with, thousands and thousands of subscribers. I even got into fitness for a while too. I had a clothing company, and then I had another clothing company, Silence Fitness, the one that was a lot more successful. And I had I used to record with me and my buddy Connor. Shout out to him if he's watching this. And we used to just record every day, every day, 5 days a week. We used to just work out, record. We would we would get told at the gym that we're go to, hey man, you can't record in here. Actually, the place I'm working out now, it used to be called something else. And that was like the first place, not the first place. That was like the second place we ever recorded. And at the time I was doing it. At the time I was doing Call of Duty. I one time I got signed by like a Call of Duty like gaming team. It was like a tournament team, and I was getting paychecks for it. I was doing game battles. I was getting paid for that. And I was also making ad revenue off my YouTube videos, and I was young. I was young. I was like 14 to 16, 13, 14, 15, 16 around that time. While the rest of my friends were out, having fun, hanging out with each other, not really partying, but just socializing in a very, mainstream way. Where I wasn't. I was in my room recording stuff, talking in a microphone. I've had so many different types of microphones, and just having fun doing something that I never really saw a future in per se, but I always knew that I enjoyed it. And that's kind of how I feel about the podcast. This was, this one right here, the Michael Lab Show, is something that I started in June of 2019, not, wanting, I had aspirations, I had goals I wanted to achieve, but never to this level. I mean, the fact that I have this, this top of the line microphone, and I have this cool little setup, it means a lot. And it shows more than anything that, you have one chance at this thing, right? You have one chance at life, whether you believe in reincarnation or not. I'm just going to assume that you don't, this is all you got. There's not another opportunity, and I just find it so upsetting that so many people, choose to live a life in pure comfort, but not pure fulfillment, and I find that, it's hard for me to digest. I remember when the first week I decided to start this podcast, I spent like, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 at a time where I had that much in my bank account. And I remember when I made the purchase, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going to put it. I just knew at the time I needed a corner. I didn't know which corner I was going to choose. I was just getting back into school. I was finally settling in at my new job. I was happy in my relationship. And I didn't know how to produce a podcast. I didn't know the first step. I didn't know anything, but as it's gone episode after episode after episode without missing a week, a few weeks here and there. I think I took like a week off one time. It's grown to this. And I know it's, the 100th episode. I should do something special. I don't really have anything in mind per se. This is going to be a shorter episode. I just want to let you guys know it's not going to be that long, 35 minutes max. But it's just going to be an episode of reminding people out there that if you are starting something, if you are in the process of doing something, that it's almost impossible to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And the chances of success are almost nil, like very low. You have to change your perspective of success, because depending on how you view what success is, if you start a podcast wanting to be like Joe Rogan, sorry to break it to you, but you're going to fail. You're not going to fail because you can't be like Joe Rogan, but you're going to fail because you want to be like Joe Rogan. That's what's so unique about this podcast, is I get that a lot. Your podcast reminds me of Joe Rogan. But the reason why I enjoy watching his podcast so much and The Fighter and the Kids so much is because the way that they do the podcast is the way I've done my YouTube channel, the way I've done my Call of Duty channel, the way I've done my clothing, my fitness channel. It's always been I merge my life with my project at the time, and there's a fine line with that. There's times where I merge it too much, and it gets to a level of it becomes very anxiety provoking. It takes a huge shot, a huge chunk out of my daily routine. And it really does. It can really affect a lot of things, but I think that's why I've gotten to episode 100, and the growth has been like no other. This past month, I'm not going to show you the numbers, but almost tripled of what my normal listeners are a month on audio. And I think it's just the cycle of doing something consistently day in and day out. And that's not the secret. The secret isn't that. The secret isn't just showing up. But the secret, honestly, is showing up. But when you show up, you want to be there. You know, when I sit in this chair, there's some days where I don't really want to be here. I would say 95% of the time, I want to be here talking to you guys. I want to be here communicating, sharing about the news, sharing about what I heard, sharing about current state of the country or the current state of my brain, what my brain was thinking. I want to share it with you guys. 95% of the time, I want to do that. And when I do want to do that, it's a burning passion of mine. That's why episode 100 is here. I get people who always reach out to me and they just give me little bits of motivation, like, hey, I love your stuff. I think what you're doing is awesome. People ask me just a lot of things, and it honestly, it means the world to me. I can't be here without anybody else listening out there. But I am, and I would never take that for granted. I would never just do an episode and not try. You know, I never have, and I always will have the best podcast out that I did at the time of my recording that I could possibly do at that time. That's that. That's all I wanted to say. No giveaway for episode 100. Nothing like that. Just the biggest thank you possible. I would say let's try to get to 100 ratings on Apple Podcasts, but dude, we're at almost 250. You know, I would say let's get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, but we're at almost 1,150. Because I've already accomplished everything I wanted to do when I released episode 1, and I knew it was going to just keep going. But dude, in 2 years, in 1 year, where I just don't know. I don't know where it will be, but I do know it's going to be there. But yeah. So cheers to that. Corona Seltzer, 90 calories. Because I say it all the time. I hope no one takes offense to this, but I drink like an alcoholic. And what I mean by that is I don't drink like an alcoholic. Like the amount I drink, I only have like one drink, maybe two. But when I drink quietly. I try to drink around nobody, just me, my girlfriend. And I just don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be heard from. And it's not a guilt thing. It's a safety thing. I mean, it really is. It's a safety thing. And I apologize. I'm sure the dog's going to be barking here any second. I ordered DoorDash some cheesecake for my girl and I. But I'm sure it's just it is a safety thing for me. I have this like, one time I remember when I was not young. I was like, it's the one time I ever drank underage in my life. I was like 20 years old, and maybe younger. I was probably like 18 or 19. It's kind of blurry in my head. But I was at the lake and I was driving, and I don't remember getting in the car. I remember drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade before I drove. I don't remember driving. I remember eating pizza. And I remember when I was eating pizza, I was intoxicated. I was just acting like an idiot. First time in my life I ever drank. Ever. I was 18 years old. First time in my life. Because I've always been so scared of alcohol. It's just this innate feeling I have since I could remember. Since I was 10 years old. I would watch people drink, and I saw them change as a person. And I think for a lot of people, it's pouring down rain right now. For a lot of people, when they see that, it's exciting. It's an escape. But for me, when I see that, it's the complete opposite. I get scared. I get scared seeing people intoxicated, especially if it's people I know, because I know that that's not them. I know it's a part of them, but I don't know. I can't predict that person anymore. Like for the years I've known them, 5, 10, 20 years that I've known them, it's altered a little bit. Their reality has switched, has turned around a little bit. So I've always had a fear of drinking because of that, because I don't like losing control of the world I live in, you know? And that's could be an OCD thing. That could be trauma from some point in my life I don't recall. It could be thousands of things. But it is something that I do consciously think of. And still now, like I worked in a restaurant for a little bit, so I'm better at it now. But even when I was younger, I could tell when somebody was intoxicated because it's just not that person anymore. And look, I think I was like, when I was younger, I was kind of known as like the prude in the sense that I didn't drink. I never thought bad about it. I just didn't do it because I was nervous, and I still am. So when I do, it's like this. It's like a Corona seltzer, and I don't have to go anywhere tonight. I like to make sure everyone I love is safe. That's like my biggest concern. But one time, like I was saying, I was at the lake. I went to get pizza, and I remember waking up the next day, and I went out to my car, and I saw that it had a scratch on it. And from that moment on, and I didn't remember getting that scratch. I don't remember. It wasn't like a little scratch. It was a good sized scratch, and I don't remember it. I don't remember it happening. And at the same time, my memory could be distorting it because it was kind of impactful on me, but I don't remember it happening. And what I do remember is that day I vowed never to drink underage again. And I didn't. I never did again because it scared the hell out of me. It scared me. I think it's personally a blessing that it did scare me, because if it didn't scare me, I think I've always wondered why I'm not an addict. I really have. I've wondered why I'm not an addict, and I've wondered why some people are addicts. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It's genetic makeup. It's your environment that you grew up in. I think a lot of it has to do with chaos, the inability to have any stability in your life. So divorce, abuse, and I trust me, this is just me saying it. So I'm not trying to define it, and I'm also not looking down upon it. I'm not trying to say something's worse than the other, but usually a lot of it has to do with time in your life was out of control, and it was an escape mechanism. Usually that's, at least the addicts that I've known, it's always that. It's like a slide outside of your world. It's like a slide into space. And the alcohol is the slide. And you get to escape whatever it is in your life that's causing the turmoil. And I've also known addicts where it's not that. It is that, but it comes from abuse. It comes from emotional abuse. It comes from, and it's an escape from yourself. You hate yourself because you hate that you've been abused. You hate that you allowed that happen to yourself. You hate that someone has taken advantage of you. You hate that the way you look at yourself, because the way people because the way people talk about you, the things that people say to you, you're punishing that person. And it's true. So much of this world, so much of the way that we view the world is through the telescope. It's through this telescope that we create for ourselves. And it's not created at 20 years old. It's not created at 15 years old. It's not created at 10 years old. It's created from 3 to 8 years old. That time of your life is when you are judging things, when you're making your decisions on things. If you never saw someone get murdered before, I've never seen someone get murdered, but I've never seen someone get shot or killed or stabbed or anything, or cursed out, or disrespected or beaten. I've seen a few of those things, obviously, but I've never seen someone get shot. But if you're 3 years old and there's a domestic at your house and your dad shoots your mom, you've not just have a different viewpoint on problem solving, but you have a different viewpoint on dad, on daddy, on mommy, how relationships in general are supposed to be, how to resolve issues. Violence doesn't exist because that's like one of the most violent acts in the world, and it just happened like that without any warning. So your tolerance for violence is so much lower. So violence in your life is probably going to be so much higher. You have this misconception about guns that they're the answers to your issues instead of the defense to your life. And I think I kind of went on a tangent there, but I think so much of those years of our life determine who we are. And I've always been an impulsive person. I've always been somebody who makes rash decisions. But I think the framework that I was given, for whatever reason, a lot of it has to do with the way I was brought up. It was very stable. Even my impulsive decisions, the spectrum of them isn't that extreme because I have a basin of stability in my life. I've really never been an addict, and I don't know why I'm talking about that, but I don't know. World, guys, I don't know what's happening right now. I'm recording this on Saturday. It's going to go up on Tuesday. I don't know what the future holds. I do know Texas just started shutting down again. They shut down the restaurants. By the time this airs, I'm sure there's going to be breaking news in New York City that they break a record high for cases. Florida, I'm sure is going to have to start shutting things down. California's already made it mandatory to wear a mask again. Where I live, Maryland, I hope they don't. There's thunder. Thunder and the lightning, thunder. That was so awkward. I'm really hoping they don't make a shutdown again. I don't know what people view economics as, but I've heard some crazy people say that with another shutdown, or I've heard people say that our economy is in an okay position. I didn't catch any flack for it, thank God. Well, even if I did, it doesn't really bother me too much. But in my last podcast, I talked about investing in the stock market. And I kind of talked about capitalism and the love-hate people have for capitalism, that once you become too successful, it's hated. But if you're just successful enough, you're loved. But if you're not successful, you're lazy. But the stock markets right now are not a reflection of the economy. If we shut down again, we're facing one of the greatest financial crises this world has ever seen. And we're printing money like it has no value. I think Bitcoin's going to make a huge surge during this recession. It's a scary time we're living in. It really is. And I hate being doomsday guy, but I also like being a realistic guy. It's a scary time that we're all experiencing, and we're all experiencing it together. And I think from this point here on out, with whatever happens with coronavirus, I personally believe the best thing right now for coronavirus is herd immunity. We all get it, and then once we all have it, we can all get over it, build up a natural resistance to it. And in the meantime, we're waiting on, Big Pharma to come out with vaccines. The irony is there 100%. Again, how a lot of people hate Big Pharma for good reasons. I think they should be held accountable for the opioid crisis in this country, which is by far the worst pandemic in the country, which is a pandemic that has never been addressed, and that's an embarrassment that heroin has never been addressed, because if you get a knee surgery, they just give you oxys, you get hooked on them, you run out of your prescription, you look for the next closest thing, but not too expensive, so you get heroin, and the heroin dealer wants to get a higher of a profit margin, so they cut it with fentanyl, they cut it with bleach, they cut it with whatever you inject in your body, and you die. I think Big Pharma should be held accountable, but now that thunder is probably picking up in the mic. I don't think I've ever recorded a podcast in a thunderstorm, but now we're depending on Big Pharma to swoop in and save the day. And it is scary to look at the future because there's so much uncertainty right now for so many people. There's so many people that are going to be going back to their jobs. The unemployment's going to spike again. It's kind of dropping right now, but it's going to spike again because once people start going back to work, they're going to be expecting to just go back to work. But it's not going to work that way. People are going to go back to the restaurant jobs. People are going to go back to the retail stores. People are going to go back to the gyms like I work in. And they're going to be like, ready to go back to work. I'm ready to work my Monday, Wednesday, Friday shift. That's 6-hour shift. My 18-hour weeks, 36-hour paychecks. And it's, sorry, you only work 18 hours. We got to let you go. Times 5 at a place. Because we can't afford to pay 5, 20 to 40-year-old people. We need to keep a few people, and I'm sorry that you go to school, but can't hire you because you're not all in with this company, and there's going to be a spike of people getting back on unemployment. And I know Trump is trying to pass another deal. He's trying to pass another DREAM Act, but not a DREAM Act. That was President Obama for the illegal immigrants to become legal. But another bill, I just don't know how long we can do this. I think that it becomes a point, and people have been saying it for months, but I think the point is now where we have to just, I probably already said too much. I probably get my ads taken down for this YouTube video, but we have to just open it up, see what happens. I don't know. I think financial crises have a long-term effect. So does coronavirus. It's a hard situation. I'm happy I'm not the one at the top calling shots. I'm happy I'm not Donald Trump. I'm happy I'm not in Congress. I'm happy I'm not a mayor of whatever calling these shots. I do kind of wish I was living in Montana or Wyoming where coronavirus barely set foot in. Besides the few assholes like me who would have vacationed from Maryland or New York to Montana and ruined their state. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to give you guys a huge thank you for sticking it out with this podcast. And I know it's been rough. I almost, I asked my girlfriend what I should do for it. And she said, you should repost episode 1 and kind of do a commentary over it, stop and talk over it. I was thinking about doing that, but I just decided just to do my normal podcast like I always do. But if you guys can go back and watch episode 1 and just how bad it was. My microphone wasn't even working. It was the volume, my voice is coming from my camera. The sound was coming from my camera. Just a lot of progress between now and then. And I hope more than anything, this just symbolizes that you can do whatever you want. You really can. Just don't stop doing it. And you will get an ROI on it. You will get a return on your investment. And it may not be money right away. And let's face it, once again, I want to make money on it. Just like you don't just work a job because you love it. No, you work a job because you love it and you want to make money. I hate that bullshit of don't do it for the money. No, do it for the money. You need to make money. You need to make money. I want to make money. But I also love it more than anything. I love doing a podcast. I love reaching out to people and talking to people and getting positive feedback and hearing things like you've changed my life or what you said helped me so much or that story just made me laugh while I was at work, stocking shelves. I laughed while I was putting the cereal up away at Target, that means the most, especially during a time like coronavirus. This is a time, holy shit, that was loud. That scared me. I jumped. This is a time where I think you can do a lot of things that you've never thought possible, and follow through on them. But the power is about to go out, guys. I love you so much. Thank you for 100 episodes, and here's to 900 more. I'll catch you guys in episode 101. Peace out. See ya.